Good morning, everybody.
We usually get an anonymous sponsorship to fill in the rest, so maybe you should announce.
Okay. So, I'm gonna, as the Rabbi said, I'm gonna be speaking about Shemittah. I structured my thing to speak about a person eating in Eretz Yisrael during Shemittah. Lots of it is going to be relevant to people who never make it to Eretz Yisrael during Shemittah also, but that's just the way I set it up. I'm not thinking about any of you if you own an apartment there, or if you think about doing work on the ground over there. That's like not what we're talking about today. We're not going to talk about the things that do at the end of Shemitah, which that you'll hear about from the rabbi at the end of the year, about making a prosbol and an esrog for Shemitah. Those are also different kinds of things. We're talking about really focusing on just on food type things. Now, the first thing you're going to say to me is, I say to you, you have to think about how you're going to eat in Eretz Yisrael during Shemitah. You say, what's the problem? I only eat things with hashgacha anyhow. Especially in Eretz Yisrael, fruits and vegetables always have problems with trumas and maishus. So I'm easy, no problem. I'm only eating things with a good hashgacha. So easy, life is simple. No, I'm not going to tell you about that. That's not my job to tell you about hashgacha. And in fact, if you were here locally, that would work. Seriously gives hashgacha on Sears 10th. Although something we watch out for the Shemitah things also. On TED, their fruits and vegetables are also, we keep an eye on what's coming from Eretz Yisrael, either for trumas and maishus or for Shemitah. But in Eretz Yisrael, we're going to find out it's not so simple. Okay, even the food that has hashgacha, and even has a reputable hashgacha, we're going to find out that things get a little bit more complicated when it comes to Shemitah. It gets complicated because of different shittas. Okay, and the reputable hashgachas take different positions on shittas that I'm going to talk to you about. And even if they gave hashgacha on it, you may all of a sudden, it may not be, so to speak, as easy as you think. Okay, so I'm going to tell you first some basics, some basic information about Shemitah, and then we're going to move into the details of these different issues. Okay, the first is, the most restrictive part for us of Shemitah is that there's a halacha called Sefichin. Sefichin means anything that gets planted every year. Think about vegetables and grains, things that you have to replant every single year. The Chacham said if that grows by itself, even if it grows by itself, you're not allowed to eat it. They were concerned that people would go ahead and plant things. They would go ahead and plant cucumbers and say, yeah, they just grew by themselves. They're just some seeds fell on the ground. So the Chacham said all Sefichin are Otzar. So all vegetables and all grains that grow during Shemitah are all of a sudden, are automatically not allowed to be eaten. Okay, as opposed to fruits, they don't get replanted every year. The oranges just grow by themselves. So those, we'll find out what you do with those. But anything that's a vegetable or grain, it's all automatically, it's Otzar. So that means, think about all the food you eat. Think about what's on your plate. Half that stuff that's on there is stuff that would automatically be Otzar no matter what.
So any GMO product?
No, it has to do with GMO. It has to do with something you plant.
It has to be replanted every year, even though that type of grain.
Okay, I'm not sure what non-GMO also has to be replanted every year. Everything has to be replanted every year. Tomatoes don't grow back the next year. You have to replant them every single year. And wheat doesn't grow back. You have to replant it every single year. Anything like that has to be replanted from year to year is in this rule called Sefichin. Okay, now, then the other half of that is that even the things that we can have from the Shemitah, like in the fruits that they grow, they don't have this rule of Sefichin. They have something called Kedushas Shevi'is. In brief, I'll tell you, because we're going to get back to it later. In brief, that means is you can't take those foods out of Eretz Yisrael. You can't buy and sell them like in business like you would buy like in regular items. You can't waste them. And you can't use them for certain non-typical uses. Okay, so all of a sudden, the orange, which is a Shemitah orange, which is perfectly fine, it's kosher, you can eat it, but you want to have to have strong, you can eat it, but it has Kedushas Shevi'is. We have to use it in certain ways, which I'm going to talk to you about, as if time permitting, we're going to get to what it means to eat it with Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay, so just to understand a little more detail about these things is, the way the times work is as follows. For grains and vegetables, they're considered Shemitah produce based on when they were harvested. So anything that's been harvested from this past Rosh Hashanah, like today, right now, the cucumbers in the market were harvested during Shemitah. It makes no difference when they were planted. They were harvested during Shemitah. Those are considered Shemitah cucumbers. For grains, that's for vegetables. For grains and fruits, it goes by when they reach a certain stage of growth. Okay, but the stage is not important. The point is, those are not going to be Shemitah produce till later in the year, till like the end of the winter, until next year. Okay, so right now, if you go buy an orange from Eretz Yisrael, it's not a Shemitah orange. Okay, that's not a Shemitah orange. It's a 6-year orange. If you buy it in 6 months from now, you buy it in a year from now, then it will be a Shemitah orange. And that's why the Yisroel will be from next year, because those are the ones that they reach that stage of growth during this year and for next year. And then one thing we'll see in a couple of years from now, there's wines that are made from Shemitah grapes. So the grapes are the ones that are going to be harvested in, 8, 10 months from now. And they won't turn into wine until, 6 months, a year after that. And then they'll come to America as wine from Shemitah, that's not this year. It'll take some time till we get it. Okay, the things that have Kedushas Shevi'is include anything that's suitable for humans or animals to eat. It's not just food that we eat, and we'll see the examples of that when I get to it. Foods of humans or animals, not medicinal type things. Okay? And it also includes certain kinds of flowers and herbs. Okay? The simplest ones it includes are what we think of as herbs, like spices, things that you actually eat. You eat the spice itself. Think rosemary. Okay? Eretz is a big exporter of spices, it happens to be. So herbs and spices, those things that you actually eat them, those are for sure included. The Yerushalmi has a suffix. What happens if you have flowers that are meant for fragrance? Think of orchids. Okay, they're meant for their fragrance. There's a shiloh in the Yerushalmi where machmer on that shiloh and say that if it's meant for fragrance, it's also considered to be Shemitah produce.
So like a rose.
So roses are not meant for fragrance. Roses are meant for their beauty, and they incidentally have fragrance. Okay, we could juggle which ones are which. Okay, depends on which one it is. I believe, if I remember correctly.
Orchids are tachometric fragrance.
So part of why you think that is, I think, okay, I'm not a florist, but from what I understand from florists is part of why you think that is because we're used to American flowers, okay, but Eretz Yisroel and Holland are big exporters of high quality flowers, and there they're meant for their fragrance. That's my understanding. I'm not a florist.
Is that subjective or is it like facts, like on botany?
Yeah, it depends on it depends what you buy it for. If people buy this flower because they like how it looks, then we assume it does not have Kedushas Shevi'is. But if they buy it for the fragrance that it has to, they buy it because you want it to give a good smell to it. If you go to a forest, which is what we did, I haven't done this yet, this week, the last week. You say to them, explain to me. And they say to you, these we put out because we like how they smell. That's why we put them out into the bouquet. And these, they just look nice. Okay? So then, depending on if it has fragrance, it could also be included. Okay? So just as an aside, you should know that for fruits and vegetables, at least in Illinois, I don't know if it's every place, but at least in Illinois, you're required to put on the country of origin. If you look at the fruits, you'll see there's little markings or flags or whatever. You don't have to do that for flowers. The flowers will know where it comes from. But for fruits and vegetables, it's easier to pick them out which ones come from Eretz Yisrael than a flower. Okay. Okay, so now, I'm going to...
Are there actually fruits and vegetables that come from Eretz Yisrael?
Yes. There's lots of fruits and vegetables. As I mentioned, herbs and carrots and peppers and persimmons, all kinds of things that come at different times. Now, it's worse during Shemitah than other years. And the reason is because during Shemitah, if you grow vegetables in Eretz Yisrael, lots of people won't eat them because we'll find out because they won't consider it kosher in Eretz Yisrael because it was grown during Shemitah. So what are they going to do with it? So they export it. So export is a way to get rid of stuff that the local market won't eat. Okay, some export is just because they have lots of it or whatever business reason. But also when no one wants to buy it, then you do have more exporting. So there's more exporting during Shemitah.
You happen to know which fruit and vegetable stores are more of an issue that they buy more produce from Eretz Yisrael?
No, I don't. It's a market. Literally, they go every day down to the market and buy what's available. So I know that again, in Ted's, they keep an eye. They're sensitive to the fact that we want to know if there's stuff from Eretz Yisrael. So from Shemitah, we do what we have to do, and from regular years, not for Shemitah so much. It's a market thing. You walk into the tomatoes are cheaper here or from here, or more quality, or whatever they're looking for, then that's what they buy.
So actually, if you have to look at where you're buying stuff.
No, so in Ted's, we're getting hashkach on it, on the fruits and vegetables, not on whether they have bugs on it, and not on the chaz. You quite literally chaz in there. But right, we keep an eye on it. And actually, last Shemitah in City Fresh, they had the same thing. 10 people doing it for a few years. Last Shemitah in City Fresh also kept an eye on it. That was fine. So we just make sure. Again,
it's like 2 years that actually doesn't be concerned with it because this year you're worried about vegetables, next year you're worried about fruit.
You're correct. So, but in Ted, it's been going on for a few years. And it's for Chumash Maisis also. Rabbi Eisenbach was just married for Chumash. I think it was on dates that they got him from them. I don't remember where they got it from. And the herbs, I'm not talking about the loose herbs that you see. Those are probably not commercial. I've seen them in like little packages, like fresh herbs, like a quality product.
I mean, they're not getting anything from Eretz Yisrael.
Who is?
Ted's.
They are. Rabbi Eidach is just mafresh truma from something.
I'm saying, but now I'm saying.
From now, not Shemitah produce. But like if they were getting oranges today, we would let them get them. We'd be mafresh truma to myself, and then we would sell them. We wouldn't. But if they got any cucumbers, they have not. No, if they come to us, we'll do it for them. It's not like we're against it. What? It's not every day that you're going to find it, but it happens.
Like how?
If you just walk into the store and you don't have any reason, no, I wouldn't be worried about it. But you can just keep your eyes open. It says it's on the sign. It says where it comes from. It says Guatemala. You're good.
Sure.
It says Eretz Yisrael. Then you have to think about. Okay, I have to be mafresh from his message. I have to think about Arla. I have to think about.
You make a chazal that there's no sign that it's not from Eretz Yisrael.
Because by law, that's how it is. By law, yes, legally, at least here in Illinois, it has to say where it comes from.
Normally also fine, right? It's under Hashgacha.
Jewels, fruit and vegetables is not under hashgacha.
It's not.
No, jewel, the only parts under hashgacha in jewel are very specific parts, like the deli. The fish. There's very specific parts that are.
Produce, they're not going out to the market.
The produce.
Where do you think they get it from?
All the time.
No, they go to the market. Of course they go to the market. That's how you get fruits and vegetables. You don't get them from Texas. They go. No.
Traveling across the store.
I don't know what the rules are.
And also bands. Especially if they have the water supply.
Probably not.
They have the water spray.
No, I would not be precious. No. Yeah, because proportion changes. I'm not going to be there, but I just don't work for it. Okay. Guys, we're not going to have time. We're for sure not going to have time. Okay, I'm going to go through. It's okay. I'm happy to talk, but I'm happy that you should talk. Okay. I'm going to quickly then go through 5 shilos that there are. And these 5 shilos, the point is not. I'm not trying to tell you that you should know the answer to the shiloh. I'm telling you the point is that hashgachas, reputable hashgachas, take different positions on these, and in their field they're good about disclosure. So they may mark on something if they were makel according to one of these opinions, but you should just be aware of them when you'll see these Hebrew words on there, what they're talking about. My hashgacha is going to say some kind of little Hebrew words there, what they're trying to tell you when they say this. Okay, the first is. There's a question about where the southern border of Eretz Yisrael is. Okay? According to this simple understanding, the southern border goes, give or take, from the bottom of the Yam HaMelech in a straight line across, give or take, to a place called Wadi al-Arish, basically a line across the bottom there. Okay? Eretz Yisrael goes, the political borders of Israel go about another 50, 60 miles below that down to Eilat. Okay? For the first, 40 miles of that it's called the northern Aravah, that's what it's called. There's a big to-do whether that is or is not part of the halachic borders of Eretz Yisrael. Okay? Past what's the 30th of latitude or longitude, whichever one it is for sure not Eretz Yisrael. Like Eilat, you keep 2 days of Yom Tov. Okay, but in those 40 miles there, what's called the northern Aravah, there are produce that grows there. It's a question whether that is or is not considered Eretz Yisrael. Most of the reputable hashgachas are machmir that it is part of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, but not everybody does. Okay, some people do not consider that to be part of Eretz Yisrael. That's probably the more correct opinion, but we're machmir to assume that other parts are. The next is Eretz Yisrael is very advanced in their technology of growing produce in greenhouses. Okay, big parts of Eretz Yisrael are desert. Okay, they wouldn't be able to grow regular produce like we grow here in Illinois, so they grow things in greenhouses. And if done correctly, according to some opinions, you don't have the din of Shemittah. So you could be growing things in Eretz Yisrael, but since it's growing in a greenhouse, separated from the ground, in Hebrew we call that a mechirah. Okay, it's a bed that's lifted off the ground, and there's all kinds of shittas. There's a whole slew of shittas of how to get it right, or if you could do it right. But there are lots of people who will grow produce in greenhouses and consider it to be not Shemitah produce.
So it's almost like a sex fake, and that a lot of, at least I remember when I lived there, a lot of these hydroponic farms are in that southern portion of the Aravah. So it's the question of it's in Eretz Yisrael.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know the statistics of that, but there could be that's true. There's something to talk about that. But again, there's different cheetahs about if you could do it and how you should do it. And they'll have produce will be marked matzah menotak. If we had slides, I would show you pictures of them. Even in the fruit store, it'll say matzah menotak to let you know what you're getting. Okay. The third is what happens if produce is grown in Eretz Yisrael on a field that belongs to someone who's not Jewish. Okay? So that produce, one thing for sure everyone agrees to is there's no Isser Sefichin on that. Remember I told you all vegetables are Otzar Sefichin, they're not Sefichin. So cucumbers grown in an Arab village, those cucumbers are not Sefichin. You're allowed to eat them. But they may still be Shemitah produce, okay, which we'll find out soon. You have to treat them with Kedushas Shevi'is. So there's a machlokes about that. The machlokes is between the Beis Yosef and the Mabdit, so it's like 400 or 500 years old, this machlokes. And the Beis Yosef, most of Eretz Yisrael assumes that it does not have Kedushas Shevi'is. So they buy from an Arab farm, it's called Yivul Nachri, okay, produce of non-Jews. Yivul Nachri, most assume that it does not have Kedushas Shevi'is to it. The Chazon Ish was machmir like the Mabdit, and he held that it does have Kedushas Shevi'is, so Bnei Brak, and those who want to follow him, will eat the produce, because it's not Sefichin, but they'll treat it with Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay? So like,
Where the whole concept of Heter mechirah comes in?
the Heter mechirah is the next step. But the Yivul Nachri is a prerequisite to Heter mechirah. You can't have Heter mechirah if you don't have Yivul, if you don't make like the Yivul Nachri. That's correct. It's a prerequisite to Heter mechirah. Okay, so if you go to Yerushalayim and you buy produce, you might treat it like a plain old cucumber, but someone from Bnei Brak would not. Okay? They would treat it like with Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay, now the next thing is the Heter mechirah. Again, Yivul Nachri was the step to get the Heter mechirah. As you know, there's a big to-do as to whether the Heter mechirah should work. What the Heter mechirah is that they sell the land of Eretz Yisrael. People sell their farms. Now it belongs to a non-Jew. If it belongs to a non-Jew, then Shemitah shouldn't apply. Okay, Shemitah should potentially not apply to that land.
And that happens every Shemittah, basically.
Each
when
Shemittah.
fields sell to guys and they win.
Right. That's correct. So it's like, just like they say it's the same thing that you do. Before Pesach, you come to the rabbi and say, I want to sell my chametz. Before Shemitah, you come to the rabbi and say, I want to sell my field, and he arranges for the field to be sold, and comes back next year, he buys back to you. Okay? So there's two, time-wise, I'm just going to be quick. There's two main issues about whether the mechirah is good or not. Okay? Two main halachic issues as to whether it's good or not. One is, there's an issue called lo sechanim. Lo sechanim means is you're not allowed to sell land in Eretz Yisrael to someone who's not Jewish. Okay, lo yisitechem chaniya b'karka. You're not allowed to sell land in Eretz Yisrael to someone who's not Jewish. Now, that in itself would be, so to speak, the rabbanut's problem. The rabbi does the mechirah maybe over on the isser of lo sechanim. He would be selling the land. I'm not selling the land. He's selling it. I just asked the rabbi to do me a favor and do it for me. But the question is, the rabbi has to sell it as my shliach. He sells it. I appoint him, say, please sell my land to this person who's not Jewish. That may be considered shliach advar vera, and it may be that when we say ein shliach advar vera, the sale doesn't go through either. That's a question. That's not clear. That's not for sure yet. So if all those pieces went true, is if there's an isser v'sechanim, and he's my shliach to sell the land, then it's ein shliach advar vera.
So the way around that is to sell it to the rabbi.
To sell, right? If you want the rabbi to burn for being over on lo sechanim. Okay. Now, they have come up with ways.
Well, Eli would never sell it to you, just laying around.
Because you live in Chicago, but you're okay. But so if we,
I own 2 feet in Eretz Yisrael in a field.
okay,
You can't go in my computer.
so you should know that there were people who came up with ideas of how to avoid the lo sechanim. And I'll tell you in 1 second what they ran into. Because they ran into the second problem. The second halachic issue with Heter mechirah is there gemir stas? Gemir stas means is that when people have a transaction, both people have to want to do the transaction. Okay? Like let's say there's a kinyan called hagbah. Okay? So if I'm sleeping and someone puts my hand up, that's not a kinyan. Because I had no interest in doing the kinyan. Just because I did the physical act doesn't mean anything. So the question is, do the people really mean it? Do they mean to make this mechirah when they're selling the land? So on the one hand, we have a rule that says is if you go through an act, you do something, the fact that in your mind you're not sincere, that doesn't mean anything. The fact that I didn't mean it doesn't mean anything. I did it. If I signed the papers and I made the transaction, then it works. On the other hand, we have another rule, which is when there's something that's a complete farce, it's obvious to everybody that you don't mean it, not just because you happen to be thinking that in your head. It's obvious to everybody that you don't mean it, then that doesn't work. Then the kinyan doesn't happen. Okay, so the question here is this dvarim shabalev, that it's just in my mind, but I'm doing all the acts, so it's considered a kinyan, or we say, no, it's obvious that nobody means it so. Okay, so now. So the difference in mechiras chametz is that you don't want to own chametz. If the guy
don't want to own a field either.
No. If the guy comes along and says, you know what, you have your box of Cheerios. Here's $3, and I'll take your Cheerios. Okay, no, I don't care. Give me the money that it's worth. I'll go buy another box. It doesn't bother you, and you actually don't want to own chametz on Pesach. As opposed to the farmer, this farmer doesn't want to give up his field. He hasn't been.
He wants to give it up. No. He wants to give it up for the year, and he wants it back now.
He doesn't want to sell.
You're saying if someone sells something,
Because things on Pesach, I don't want it 24
That's not true. You don't want it back.
The question is, first of all, it depends on if that's what really happens. If you really need, a lot of farmers wouldn't give it. And also, a lot of these people are not even trying to shop it. They don't really take care less. They don't want to sell it. Yes, okay. Rega. So let me just tell you. Last Shemittah and the one before him, I don't know what happened this year. Last Shemittah and the one before him, they had this great idea. They said, we're going to solve the first problem of Lo Sechanim. And the way they're going to solve it was through, technically in Eretz Yisroel, all the land belongs to the government, and they just give people leases on their land. No one actually owns their land that they have. Okay, they give people 99-year leases on their land. So the people said, it's a socialist country, yes.
Is that true? It's not true
Yes.
everywhere. No, it's not everywhere. It's not true at all.
In
It's true in a lot of lands that are leaseholds. There's a huge portion of the land that are owned by people.
Okay, it could be. It's my understanding that the vast majority of Eretz Yisrael
That's true.
belongs to the
That's
country.
majority. A lot of land, a lot of fields, and a lot of farms are privately owned.
Okay.
Even in Shalim, half the lands are owned by the church and leaseholds, but there are things that are owned by individuals.
Okay, so what they did was,
Circumvent, it's a major legal
so what they did was,
foundation.
the people said is instead of selling our fields for Shemitah, we'll give back our leases to the government. There's no law according to that, give the lease back, and then the government could sell without shlichus. The government is Jewish. Then they could do the mechirah. Then they could do the mechirah without shlichus. Okay, without shlichus they could do it. The problem was so from the Lo Sechanim shlichus angle they made that was an improvement because there was no shlichus over here. But from the Gemara Stas they made it horribly worse because to think that the government of Israel is going to sell 80% of the land to somebody who's not Jewish, that's so obvious. It's not a bunch of people selling the little farms that maybe you could say maybe they really mean it. But the government representative sits down and says, yes, I'd like to sell you all the land of Israel for 80 trillion shekel. You can have the whole thing. We'll move off back to Brooklyn. It's not going to be. You know what I mean? It's not. So that makes that part worse. Okay. Anyhow, the last thing is Shiloh. So back to the structure we were saying is that people who rely on the Heter mechirah, that a hechsher that would rely on that would be saying the food is kosher. While if you don't agree with Heter mechirah, then you'll say then it's not. Okay, now in this sense, the hashgachas that you would probably eat from, all the national American hashgachas and the reputable Israeli ones do not follow the Heter mechirah, but there are other hashgachas that do. So again, you may be getting something that the person is saying, I give hashgacha on this food as being kosher, but it doesn't meet that standard. The last thing is like this. To get that, I have to explain to you something, which is there's something called Otzar Beis Din. Okay? Otzar Beis Din, everyone agrees to. Yeah, I believe. Otzar Beis Din means it's like this. If I have a field that, and on my field I grow grapefruits, so it's Shemittah, it's Heter. Anybody can come and take any grapefruit they want to. So that's really nice. Where everybody wants to get one. But my field is out in the middle of no place. So how is anybody going to take advantage of these grapefruits that are sitting on the field? So what we do is, the community, it's not a requirement at all. But people want to be able to get them, so the community gets together and assigns somebody and says, you go down to the field, get a truck, get all the grapefruits and bring them to town so we can all eat them. Okay? So an individual can't do that. An individual can't harvest all the grapefruits as part of Kedushas Shevi'is. You can't just do that. But the community can appoint someone and send him down and say, you be responsible, get us all the grapefruits, bring them to town and we'll eat them. Okay? That's what you have to do. It's called Otzar Beis Din. The Beis Din, the community, appoints someone to do that. Okay? So as a sort of an aside to what we want to talk about, that's a way that farmers during Shemitah earn some money, which is the farmer who keeps Shemitah, Beis Din appoints that farmer to do this kind of work. They say, you know how to take care of your field, then you harvest, you're allowed to pay for that. You're not allowed to pay for the fruit, but you're allowed to pay for the labor, you're allowed to pay for the bags that he's going to put it into, the boxes. Imagine, and the delivery, and all the trucking, all the work that he does. So he gets paid for that work. That's a side thing. That's a way that money comes to farmers.
What happens with that produce?
Now the produce comes to town, and the produce you have to pay then for the amount that the Beis Din, the community, spend to get it brought into town. But you don't pay for the fruit. Now that fruit has Kedushas Shevi'is.
So how does it work for all the wineries? That's what they do. That's your business. So what do? The winery itself, they have their farms. So they're the representatives. So they're buying it from Beis Din back.
They don't, no, Beis Din appoints them to do the work,
Right.
and then says, we want you to turn it into wine. We don't know how to make wine. You can imagine the Beis Din making wine. They don't know what they're doing. So they say, you guys make wine out of it, put it into bottles, and when it's all ready, we'll pay you per bottle, pay you $3 a bottle for your wine, because pay for the bottle and for your labor and like that.
So we're buying the bottles here. In Eretz Yisrael, at Kedushas Shevi'is, what are we paying it?
You're paying to Beis Din. You're paying to Beis Din.
The one who's selling it to...
Well, Beis Din goes to supermarket. We want you to sell it. We're going to give you $3. You sell it the next day for $3.50. So that's all that money is going paying the bills to get the wine to the store.
Essentially, all the wines being sold on Eretz Yisrael are non-profits, and spending, making money off it, help us, whatever they want to do with the money.
That's supposed to be non-profit. But the person who's making money is supposed to be the farmer, the person who represents Beis Din appointed. He's being paid by the hour to do his job. So
So the hourly fee they're paying him basically the same amount he was making before?
that's a separate question, not for today. But often it ends up being similar, but it shouldn't be. Okay? In theory, it shouldn't. Okay. Okay, we're running over tight here. So anyhow, there's a way. I have to just say this last part. There's a way that Otzar Beis Din, that there's something called zri'a mukdemet. Okay, zri'a mukdemet means early planting, which there's a machlokes about this, but the Chazon Ish holds that if you plant vegetables before Shemitah, and they grow during Shemitah, if they plant them at all before Shemitah and they are harvested during Shemitah, they are not considered Sefichin. They have Kedushas Shevi'is because they were harvested during Shemitah, but they're not considered Sefichin. So the farmer plants his tomatoes a few days before Rosh Hashanah. Those get harvested, or a man would plant potatoes. For months during Shemitah, he could be harvesting potatoes that were planted right before Shemitah. So they have Kedushas Shevi'is. They would be sold through an Otzar Beis Din, but they're not Sefichin. There's an odd breed we have over here. Vegetables, I told you, all vegetables are Otzar because they're Sefichin. They're harvested during Shemitah. So these are vegetables that are harvested during Shemitah, and they're considered Shemitah produce, but they're not considered Sefichin. So you're allowed to eat them. So if you hold of zri'a mukdemet, which the Chazon Ish did hold of it, then this produce, you can eat it, you have to eat Kedushas Shevi'is. Other people hold, no. This is Sefichin, you now eat it all together. Okay? So this is a kula to say zri'a mukdemet is mutter. Okay?
Then it's only cool in his entire life.
No, it's not true. Actually, Chazon Ish has 3 very big kulas about Shemitah. But okay. So I would take all this more time. I'm just time crushed. Okay. So what I want to show you now is what does it mean? What does it mean that produce has Kedushas Shevi'is? Okay. Through one of these different ways that I mentioned to you, you end up with something that's Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay. You end up with something that has usually it would be a fruit. That's why I brought fruits with me. You end up with something that has Kedushas Shevi'is. So I just want to go briefly through some of the things that would be relevant to know what you should do with this thing that has Kedushas Shevi'is, to understand what it means. Okay, so the first thing is like this. You have to use Shemitah produce for the proper use, the best, or typical good way of using the produce. Okay, so I'm going to first do a lemon. Okay, people eat lemons, but almost nobody eats lemons straight. People don't bite into lemons unless they're doing it because they're sick. Okay, if they can eat lemons. Okay, but people don't eat it straight. So if a person were to eat it straight, that would be considered wasteful. That's not the right way to use a lemon. Okay? But if you want to squeeze lemon into your drink, that's okay. That's what people do with lemons. You want to make lemonade, that's okay. Okay? In contrast to if you have carrots, okay, people eat carrots. Almost nobody juices carrots. Therefore,
That's not true nowadays.
okay.
It's a very...
Okay, I'm sorry. So in my
We don't care about them because they're a bunch of liberals. He's saying.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying.
Gosh. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be juice nowadays.
Okay. Peaches. Most people don't juice peaches. Okay, they do. Okay, so potato juice. So, oh my gosh.
Vodka. It's called potato vodka.
So a person has to use it for the best use. Okay, so now then you're not allowed to waste the produce. So it means it's like this. So if I cut slices of lemon, I don't have to eat the lemon. Okay, you don't have to eat the produce. But if I cut this piece and I said, I'm eating this one, but this piece at the end, this is not. I don't need this one. Okay, I can't throw it out. I can't waste it. That's considered wasteful to throw out the rest of this part of the orange. Of the lemon. Okay? But that thing that says that you can't waste it is only something that some people would save. Okay? Nobody saves the liquid that's on the knife. Okay? There isn't anybody who's so frugal that they save the liquid off their knife. Okay? Everybody pours that in the garbage. Okay? And therefore, you're not mechuyev to save that. Okay? So when you make Havdalah on Shemitah wine, you're not allowed to pour it out over the edge, let it spill into the cup. You're not allowed to put your candle out into that wine, because that's considered wasteful. But after you drink from the cup, if there's a few drops left, nobody puts that back into the bottle. If there's a few ounces, some people put that back. But if there's a few drops, nobody puts that back, you could spill that out. You don't have to worry about that. Okay? Now, a question.
In the example of overflowing your place for Havdalah, most people don't. That's considered wasteful?
But if you just overflow it and you just now you're going to pour it, what are you going to do with it after you fill it up? So, no, but that's an amount, but you're right. You're true that but it's an amount it's an amount of wine that somebody would save. An ounce or two of the wine, there are people who would pour that or would keep an ounce or two, so you have to keep it.
But for Havdalah, everybody's night to throw that in the garbage.
Okay, the interesting question. Okay, I'll have to think about that one. I'll think about that. But putting it in your pockets, you can't do that thing. That thing doesn't work. No. Right, with Shevi'is. Because you're wasting it.
But even though that's not the derech of people using it?
Wait a second. How many, of all the bottles of wine in the store, how many of them end up in people's pockets? Right, that's not what people do with wine. They don't stick it in their pockets. Okay, I don't think that goes. Okay, now. Okay, now, I took the lemon, and I squeeze it into my drink, whatever your favorite drink is, okay? I put it into my drink. And now, I'm not going to do this for you. I don't have a cup here, but I pour it into my drink, and now I'm left with the rind behind, okay? So, what do I do with that? So, the first thing is, when you're dealing with a lemon, lemon rind actually has a food use. People use it for food use. They make food out of it. Correct. So therefore, you would not be able to throw that out because it still has a food use.
Just eating meat in there, so that's it.
Now, but what happens if you have? Okay, what happens? Okay, I'm not throwing out the peel because the peel I could still use as food. What about the pits inside of my lemon? Okay, nobody does anything with the pits inside the lemon. Well, that's what you say. But the truth is what?
Yeah, you can replant it.
Well, replanting just because you use it for planting wouldn't mean it has Kedushas Shevi'is. It wouldn't have to be, but it's animal food. So the thing is like this. If something is food for animals, the din says something that's food for animals, it has Kedushas Shevi'is, because anything that's fit for humans or for animals. Okay, Heter for I forgot the end of the puzzle. You get, but the shiloh is like this. That din was said for people who live in agricultural society. And they had animals to feed it to. So when they had leftovers at the end of the meal, they put it outside and the horses ate it. Okay? What am I going to do with pits? Okay? Who will eat my pits? There aren't any animals around who I can feed my pits to. Okay? So that's a shiloh whether the din is the same when nowadays there's nothing for me to do with those pits. Those are not animal food. In theory, they're animal food. But living where I do, it's not animal food. There's nothing realistic that I can do with that. Okay, so that's a shiloh whether those two don't have Kedushas Shevi'is. Okay, I'm going to skip that because I'm over time already. And now that so we figured out that there's something left over. Let's say the rind, or just this piece like this that I decided not to eat. Okay, or from the apple, had I peeled it, I was going to talk about different shilohs about apples, about what the Kedushas Shevi'is for apples might be, how to treat them properly. But I had leftovers, and I'm not eating them. I can't throw them out. So what do you do? So there's two ways to deal with it. There's the traditional way to do with it, and then there's the modern way to deal with it. Okay? And you tell me what you think makes more sense. Okay, traditionally, what people did was they wrapped it up and put it in the garbage. And the point was that when they wrapped it up, you can't just put it straight into the garbage because that's not treating it properly. You're putting it together with all kinds of other junk in there. So wrapping it up was a way of treating it more respectfully and putting it into the garbage. Now, in the garbage, it's going to get crushed up and mixed. But that's considered a grumble. I'm okay. I'm allowed to do that. So I would put it into a bag, put it into the garbage, and it would be that would be the end of it. That was the traditional way that people dealt with the leftovers from Shemitah. It's not just an ornament. I mean, you could have a salad and you have some pieces left at the end, and that's what they put into a bag, put it in the garbage. Came over people and said, you know what? No, I don't want to make a grum either. I don't want to treat it so nicely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have what's called a pach Shevi'is. Okay, a pach. In English, we call it a garbage can. Okay, but so it's a container, and I put my Shemitah produce into it, and I leave it there, and when it gets rotted to the point that even animals won't eat it, then I say no problem. Now I can throw it out because now it has no Kedushas Shevi'is. But the problem was like this. No, I'm not talking about compost. No. We are way before that. The problem is like this. Okay, so today you guys had some salad. He has some salad left on his plate. He puts it onto his thing and it sits there. Okay, comes tomorrow morning and he has another salad. Well, he can't put that into there because, hey, it doesn't sit well with it, and that's like half spoiled already. So it wouldn't be proper to the Shemitah produce put into there. So that's the Thursday one, and he makes a Friday one. Now comes Shabbos, he has some leftover from his cholent. Well, cholent and salad don't go together, so he has a third one. So by the end of the week, he's got a whole lineup. Before the first one goes bad, he's allowed to throw it out. Okay, so Pachal time.
If it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. So if I have a second salad, either I can throw it into that one, or I can take that one from the garbage.
So you're right. But first of all, it's starting to go. And sometimes food don't mix with each other. Cholent and salad don't go together. So it's not proper to the cholent to mix it with the salad. So what happens? So then people say, okay, so we'll just put like a layer in between. Like they put like a piece of foil in between, like layer it up of all the different things. But so there are a lot of people who try to do that, and there are a lot of other people who just keep with the traditional way of doing it, which was like this isn't really so practical for most people. But you'll probably see both. Okay, I'll take
Composting in general.
Well, composting is not inherently composting is not proper for Shemitah produce because that's a waste. If this is food, if this is edible now and I use it for fertilizer, I'm not using it for the proper use. The use it has is for food or for humans or animals to eat it. So to use it for composting is not the way I'm supposed to do it. If once it's spoiled, I can do whatever I want to. But while it's still usable for people, I can't compost it. That would be a waste for it. That would be not using it properly.
How Shevi'is would not be an issue with, say, a mirror dining room. So every meal they can fill up the whole thing and they tie it up and they're done, right?
But, well, if they had Shemitah produce, yes, they could just throw the whole thing and
That's
get
what
rid of
they
it.
do. They have the right Kashrus.
Okay.
But I'm saying, because they have enough volume that they can tie up one bag per meal, they don't have the issue of different meals.
Well, you see, wait a second. Tie it up is the old way of doing it, which is put it out in a bag.
That's putting
But
it in a
if you want to wait for it to rot, that means if every meal they have a whole garbage can full of all their stuff waiting to rot. That's going to be quite a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? They have 3 meals a day, and there's lots of stuff there. You know. Okay. So I'll take questions if you want to. Anybody have any questions? Okay, we can go home also. Okay, fine.
So
Go ahead.
how far does this go? Meaning, if you have, that's a loaded question. You know, like, you have to be careful about orange juice.
What about orange juice?
Meaning, if the oranges, if it's Shevi'is oranges, and you know, it's I don't know what's that brand.
Tropicana next year.
Golden Florida and Brazil.
They have to worry
No,
about
but it's really
So if you yes, of course, you have to be concerned that's from
How
Shemitah.
far does it go?
So the juice is a use of the food. It has Kedushas Shevi'is. So if it comes from a Shemitah orange, either it's Shemitah orange, which would be it would be a Shemitah orange, and you have to treat it like with Kedushas Shevi'is. You could drink it. You can drink it. You just have to not waste it and not discard it, etc.
Let's say it's a major market.
If it has a reputable hashgacha, so let me say something. Okay. A reputable hashgacha will not, they can't actually, but they won't sell you something that's Kedushas Shevi'is to a consumer who doesn't know what to do with it. They won't give it to you and just say, here, go eat, take care of it, and you don't know what you're supposed to do with it.
One thing Eretz sold that chocolate is sold in the whole market.
So they put out a market, they say, this has Kedushas Shevi'is, people who know what to do with it. But a national brand is not
What
going
are they going to tell them? They're going to tell them not from and not to buy the orange juice that has the
No. So, okay, orange juice sold like this one, I can't believe would have Kedushas Shevi'is. They sell oranges in the store, figuring, and people who walk here who know what to do and will buy Kedushas Shevi'is.
Will oversee the Tropicana orange supply next year.
Yes,
Make sure that
of course, they would not
Other
let
people are not allowed to have oranges from Eretz.
Correct. That's correct. Because if they were, the Jewish people and not Jewish people won't do Kedushas Shevi'is. That wouldn't be very responsible.
I'm just saying we
they would not.
assume that in that.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, if it's a reputable hashgacha, then
I guess the second question, how does Shevi'is apply to, let's say, you're using the example of lemon, like use that for fragrances, use that for, soap. How does it apply in that?
So that's a good question. I'm trying to remember if you're allowed to use it for soap. I don't believe you are. I don't remember. But each of the uses you have to think it through and say there's a few few criteria. One is if it's for human use, and it is. The other question is called something hanasan ruin shava. Do you get the benefit from it at the same time that you destroy it? So maybe you could be. I don't remember.
I mean, lots of produce are specifically meant for other uses other than... One way around that would be like, for example, give it to ethanol resin, one of the main shows is 6 pounds. The whole thing is that without the so, the kids eating. That's what I don't think about it. I have to think about that. Okay.
So it's very bad for the